Hey everybody, welcome to the Be Insightful in Technology podcast. I'm your host, Shakeria Johnson, aka Shy, and I'm here to help you gain some knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to be insightful in technology. So let's get into today's episode. I have a guest that I met at the Global Women in STEM Leadership Summit, and it was amazing hearing her speak. I was actually really inspired by some of the things she said, and I'm so happy she agreed to be on the podcast. I'm going to let her introduce herself, then we can dive deeper into her journey. So, may you introduce let us know who you are, what do you do, and where can people find you if you're on LinkedIn or any social media.
Hey, Shakira, thanks for having me today. It's Kerry Brown. So it was a pleasure to meet you at the Global Women in STEM Summit and talk about how women can empower women because it takes a tribe, it takes a village. So not just women, but everybody. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Kerry Brown, Kerry Brown. I currently work for a company called Celonis. It is a process mining company. And for the prior almost 20 years, I worked for a company called SAP that's a bit better known. Celonis specifically looks at how you use software like SAP or Oracle or Salesforce and other technologies to see where people do or don't follow the process to do their job. So if you imagine a process has 20 steps, kind of like if you and I both got in the car to drive from here to the mall, we might not take the same route. We might not take the fastest route. So when people do their work, they don't always take the best, fastest route. So Celonis helps you look and see how people are doing their job, where they're making mistakes, where we could help them, how we can automate or simplify what they do to make their jobs easier. So I've been in technology for a long time, but I'm not a technologist. My role at Celonis is a customer transformation advisor. My role at SAP was a similar one, helping organizations navigate through transformation. And my background to get into that, I was a customer of SAP's for 12 years, working at Coca-Cola Enterprises, working at Baker Hughes, another Australian multinational, on all of their transformation and process improvement and re-engineering work. And so I joined SAP to continue in the same space.
Okay. So since you started off as like one of their customers, did you notice the things that could have been better and you brought that into the company once you transferred in?
Yeah, yes, and so my role at the customers was very much around how you adopt technology. So I led all the organizational change management at Coca-Cola globally, for example. So if you think about then at the time, there were 1,200 people in IT who needed to build a new system that the 50,000 employees were going to use. My job was to help prepare that IT organization to be able to do that and get the right training and skills for them so that they could do their job. But really, the bigger part of my job was to figure out how the 50,000 people were going to do their jobs differently when we brought in that technology. So I would say the thing that I brought to SAP and still do, when I look at technology, my litmus test is how do people's jobs change? So whatever it is you're bringing in and whatever it is you're changing and doing, what do I need to know? Because I think that people, an analogy I use a lot with people in technology is they want the easiest path to success. So if you think about a microwave oven, people hit minute, but they don't necessarily use all the defrost and other features, and they don't open up the back to figure out how to use it. They just want to figure out how to heat lunch and make popcorn. So with technology, my test then goes back to how do people's jobs change? And that's the view I would say that I've always brought, is to think about the user and people versus the technology itself.
Oh, so do you really love being more people focused and helping them find their path through it and learning how to utilize it?
I do. I do. And actually, about 10 years ago, it's funny to say now that the term future of work didn't exist. And on the cover of all the magazines in the world, we were talking about digital 2.0 and how the world was going to be so different, which sounds really funny now because now ChatGPT and generational AI is the thing that everybody's talking about. And not just tech people, like your neighbor and your friends and your parents and your cousins and your sisters are all talking about what that means to how you go to school and what you study. So at the time, Digital 2.0 was on the cover of all the magazines from a tech standpoint. And the question I was asking is, what does it mean to people? And we actually started talking about it in terms of the digital workforce and looked at personas and different kinds of jobs. We got a group together to say, what are the kinds of personas that might change with new technology? And it's funny now because one of the personas was a call center rep. We all talk to call center reps all the time. And historically, call center reps worked in an office in little cubes, all side by side. And one of the challenges is people really don't love those jobs and they're hard and they had to be available all the time. And we looked at it and said, wouldn't it be interesting if those people could work anywhere, anytime with a computer and a phone from home or somewhere else? Who knew that COVID was going to come and the whole world would figure out how to work from home with a computer and a phone? But if you look now, to me, that people really scratch my itch, they do. So understanding how people's jobs can change and how to help them thrive is really part of whether it's in school or in a career. I really enjoy looking at how to help people be successful.
So did you always start out doing more customer centered focus on technology, just being able to navigate towards that future work and just always progressing towards including more technology, or has it ever been we're taking away any technology?
I would say that I've always looked at how to adopt technology and use technology on the people side. So I did a tiny bit of, coding of help type stuff a long time ago. So I understood what it took to do that for the team that I was managing. But I sort of think about how you use technology. So, if you're going to get a new phone, what do you do with it? If you're going to get a new computer, what do you do with it? So what is that user experience? I also think that, to me, when I think about future of work, I define it not only where we work, but how, to your point of taking technology or taking work away, I looking at who is working, so how the demographics are changing of who's in the workplace, how many boomers are there, how many millennials are there, how many Gen Z are there, how many people are changing the jobs that they have. So that impacts what kind of people you need, what kind of jobs there are, how the work experience is changing. I also look at where you're working. So understanding hybrid work and the ways that we stay at home, don't stay at home, what makes the most sense, what does that require? Back to, you've got changing leaders and managers, you got changing plays of working. And then to your question of work going away, is where does automation come in? And where does machine learning or AI start to change the way we work? So sort of the people, process, technology, to me, are all the things that feed into how the future of work happens and where technology becomes an enabler or a contributor or an accelerator or a replacement, where things aren't safe or where there aren't enough people or where work doesn't need to be done by people but could be done by technology, so that we can use our smart brains to be a bit more creative.
I want to ask you, like, what inspired you to get into this type of work?
Yeah, I'm curious. It's probably if I think about characteristics of me, I'm curious. I like connecting things. I look at how to take sort of big, messy problems and simplify them into analogies or stories that are more easily understandable. So if I look at, my day job when I was SAP at one point was really looking at how to do consulting related to change and learning. If I go way back, I actually started in marketing. My job, I started, my studies were in sports marketing. So I thought I'd grow up and run the Olympics. And I had a marketing job at a sport governing body. And then I switched to a marketing job at a construction materials company. And then that company looked at how to improve the way it ran their business and build teams and leadership. And I got asked to be on a cross-functional team that did that, which exposed me to how to do process improvement and reengineering. And that sort of changed what I was doing to be more project oriented than task oriented. So I did a lot of projects over time and I followed projects. That got me on an SAP project with that company. I followed that project around to different parts of the company. I followed other SAP projects at other companies. And then I joined SAP and did projects for lots of companies. So it's been very project oriented versus me doing the same job over and over again. I kind of do a different thing with different people. And so if I look at me and how I got there and what made me do this, I think I get bored if I'm doing something that isn't different. And so being on projects allows me to solve a different problem. If I think there was a conference a few years ago where this gentleman had everyone write down, what do you not get to do today because you're here at this conference? And turn to the person on your right and tell them all the things you don't get to do. And then they had you turn to the person on your left to say all the things you have the opportunity to do. So it's sort of the mindset around the work that you did. And they asked, what is it that makes you most happy about your job? And for me, what I realized is when people buy technology, at the time I was working for SAP, they're investing a lot of money, and it's a really big spend for their company. And so they put the smartest people they have on it because they're spending a lot. And that big investment means they want to ask really good, hard questions. And that's a privilege and an honor to be part of that. And it's interesting. So I think that diversity and difference and change is something that keeps my brain candy for me and keeps me interested.
Oh, okay. So can you give like a quick explanation on the project mindset versus like the task oriented mindset? Because I think I'm in like a task oriented mindset due to like the work that I'm doing right now.
Yep.
But it's like it's all comprised in projects, but
Yep.
I'm so deep in the work, I feel task oriented.
Yeah, I totally get it. It's the analogy I don't know if you've ever heard is, have you done 5 years of work and done the same work 5 years, or did you do 5 different years of work? So some people have task-oriented jobs where, and we need that too. And so when you look at technology, though, is maybe where do some of those tasks become things that can get automated because they might not be super interesting. But task-oriented jobs are jobs where the job is the same day by day, week by week, year by year, and has a lot of repeatability to it, versus non-task, more project-oriented jobs. What is predictable is the cadence of a project. So you plan it, you execute it, you measure against it, and you complete it. So the rhythm of a project is consistent, but the problem you're solving will change. You can certainly get to where you repeat projects. So some people are doing things where they're repeating the same kind of work in a project, and that becomes a bit more task oriented. I've had based on the work that I do, the projects are different, because if you're working with a different company who's got different problems, then the project ends up being a bit different, even if the way you run a project is the same. So for me, that means the puzzle that I'm trying to solve for people is different, and the project is different. Even if the cadence for how you run a project, the path and the steps through are the same, the actual things you're working on are different each time.
What are some skill sets that people could use since you started off in marketing and then you transitioned? What are some of those skill sets that you feel like people can utilize to get to where you are?
One suggestion I give is find your side hustle. So if I look at the future of work topic, my day job when I created that was to deliver and execute and manage consulting. So I had people who were doing work that was very predictable and was what I was measured on. But my side hustle was figuring out, and all that consulting work was related to change management and learning, so how people use technology. But I was finding that there were different influencers and different variables that were changing how change and learning was happening inside companies. So if there was a lot of turnover of people, if there was a lot of new technology coming in, whatever those different variables were. And that made me curious to find out more about what those variables would be that would influence my day job. So my side hustle was to really start to look at and understand and build a point of view and some expertise and some knowledge and thought leadership around future of work. And that ended up becoming part of my job. So the volume of knowledge and skill that I had in that space informed the way the other work happened. So instead of that being something I spent 5% of my time on, it became something I probably spent 25, maybe 30% of my time on, and became part of what I was measured on and compensated for, versus it being extra work. So to me, if you want to get into something different, the skill that you can apply is where does your curiosity take you, and look at how to pursue that side hustle in a way that it's connected to what you need to do, that you're paid to do, that's your day job, but might build you another bridge to something different that you could be doing. And that way, your passion and your energy and your interests will give you the momentum to want to do something different.
That because it allows a little bit more flexibility within your career. Like for me, I had a whole 5-year plan and I realized like I'm coming up towards the end of it. Like I've reached a certain point and 5 years is almost there. So I'm figuring out my next steps and I'm learning to be more flexible because now that I'm here, I thought my next goal would be like network architect. Like we'll head towards that, we'll do that. But I'm realizing like I really do like the more people focused things. And this
Mhm.
podcast has actually allowed me to gain more
Exactly.
skills to do more stuff.
Like this
So
is a side hustle for you. This is something that gives you a whole bunch of more information and a whole bunch of new ideas and network and exposure that you wouldn't have if you're just doing your day job. So yay
mhm.
you, by the way. Cool idea.
Thank you. Oh, okay. So I gotta get to the next topic.
Okay.
So, what are some of your thoughts, comments, and concerns is about what's going on in the field, and like, what do you think could be better? And I love to hear this from you because your whole ideas and flow is through future work and just changing things and disrupting what's happening now. So, what do you think about that?
If I look at the biggest thing in this space right now, it's certainly generative AI. That is it's in every newspaper, it's in every blog, it's everywhere, everywhere. And it's affecting everyone from kids in school to people in businesses. And so my thoughts on it are we don't know what we don't know yet, but we should look at it. We should figure it out. And so if I look at kids in school or look at people at work, if you think about what you get tested on as a student, some people say, well, is it cheating? Well, is it cheating to use a calculator versus to learn basic math? Not really. Depending on if you know how to do basic math, then you can use a calculator to do those problems faster, easier, quicker. So if I look at generative AI, is it cheating to use generative AI? It could be, but if you know how to do something and it can expedite your starting point or build out where you don't have time or resources to do something, it just becomes a different tool to use. So I think that what's exciting and interesting to me is, and there's certainly big privacy and cybersecurity issues related to all of this. Um, and that is also something that has to be figured out along with the capabilities that go with this. But when you think about how we build things that we do at work, so build presentations or build documentation or build training materials or build research, the ability now for generative AI to have a broader view and do some more homework for us to make it faster might allow us to get more done with more reach and more comprehensive data points than as a person I couldn't possibly read the 70 books on something. I might read 7, but if generative AI can scope through 70, it might find me some other nuggets or ideas or information that I wouldn't have had the bandwidth to look at. So I think it's a really exciting and interesting way to integrate and collect information and data and stories and pictures and so forth to change the way that we execute our work day to day that I can't even entirely imagine. Like, and an analogy I use is like I was late to the iPhone game. I loved my BlackBerry. You used to be allowed to drive and use your BlackBerry. Now you can't. I don't. And it's really hard to drive and use your iPhone, and it's illegal. But when I went from the BlackBerry to the iPhone is like a life device. It wasn't just a portable email communication device. It is how I shop. It's how I get directions. It's how I travel. It's how I bank. It's how I dot, 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 dot. And I couldn't have imagined all the things I wasn't doing with it until I was doing them. And I think generative AI is going to be the same. In 5 years, we'll be doing things with it that we would never have imagined we'd be doing that, why wouldn't we be doing it? It will feel so obvious.
Can't wait to see all possibilities really come to life
Me too.
because I'm excited for it.
Me
Like
too. Yeah.
it will definitely be a complete life changer. And it's like I can't imagine what would happen next after Gen AI comes to life. It's crazy how much we're doing with it. So And we're almost towards the end of the podcast, and I want to just get a little bit like a quick, maybe 3 to 4 tips on how people can get to where you are,
Mhm.
and just something to sum it up, just some good advice for the people.
Sure. Um, I admire people who plan. Like when you say you have a 5-year plan, there's somebody who used to work for me. She's a fantastic planner. Every month she sets goals for herself and looks at personal and professional goals, and she revisits them every month and looks at her annual goals and really thinks about that and thinks about who she is and who she wants to be. And I admire that. I'm not that great at doing that in that orderly of a manner. I'm a very reflective person, so I think um, taking some time to understand who you are. Like I had a mentor once, and their coaching on it was look at the 3 things you're best at and look at the 3 things you're worst at, and figure out how to be outstanding, like remarkable at the 3 things you're best at. Like become excellent and superb and better at anybody else at the things you're naturally good at. And make sure the things that you're not good at don't bite you, that they don't stop you from being excellent. But don't try and become excellent at the things you're bad at, because they're not your natural strengths. So I think my advice is look at what your superpower is, look at what your secret sauce is, look at what excites you, and think about how to maximize or multiply or grow that. And make sure that the things which are your weaknesses, that you become aware enough of them and good enough at them that they don't hold you back. In terms of getting to where I am, be open-minded, be curious, like talk to different people. I've never really said, this is the job I'm doing next, and this is the job I'm doing next, which I've often had jobs where I'm one of one. There's not other people who do the job I do. Even now, the job that I'm doing, there's 10 of us, but I'm quite different to the other 9. The other 9 are, one of these things is not like the other and doesn't belong. I'm the one of those things, and the other 9 are pretty consistent. So look at how those strengths you have can help somebody, and be bold, share with people, hey, what about this? I could try that, and ask. And usually people will be keen to help you if you've got something to bring to the party. So, look at what you've got to bring, be curious about where you can share it, and suggest that to somebody where you might be able to help them along. And I think people would be pleasantly surprised to see how receptive the world is to taking in goodness.
Like I'm sitting here taking in that advice too. Like I really do hope that this will guide people throughout their journey, because it's one of those things where you may not think about it a lot, but just being open can lead you to multiple different places.
For sure. Absolutely.
Oh, and let's get into the last segment of the podcast. So, what is a motivating and insightful quote that you would like to share to those listening?
Oh, wow. My favorite quote, I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to pull up my favorite quote is a Roosevelt quote. And it may even make me teary when I read it because I love the quote. So here it is. I think it's a fantastic quote, and I think about it personally and professionally. So here it is. It's Theodore Roosevelt. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again. Hang on, my screen changed. Again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. I love that quote. I think it's true personally. I'd rather fall in love and get heartbroken than not try and fall in love. I'd rather try something and fail than not try it. And Brene Brown, who I adore, Daring Greatly, her book echoes that quote, of being vulnerable and trying. So that's my favorite quote for sure.
Oh, I got chills. Like
Yeah, me too. It's a great quote.
it
Yeah.
is. It just makes
So
you
yeah,
like,
I'm very much a carpe diem person. So that was my phrase for years. If you ever, it's an old movie and it dates that I'm a Gen X person, but Dead Poets Society was my favorite movie. And oh, Captain, my Captain. Yep, carpe diem. Try.
yes, those are true words to live by. I'm usually like, I'll try everything at least once.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nothing illegal, but I'll try everything at least once. So I'm so happy that you came on the podcast today, and I really enjoyed your company. If you guys are on LinkedIn, connect with Kerry Brown. I'll make sure to include her information in the show notes. She's honestly a great person to be on the lookout for. She posts great advice, and I love it. Like, I really enjoyed meeting you. You're one of those people that I know that I have an advice for life kind of journal, and I like put in stuff for it. And I've definitely taken some notes from when you spoke. So thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
on to the podcast, and thank everybody for tuning in to Be Insightful in Technology, and hope you've gained some knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. So thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you, Shakira. It was really a pleasure. I appreciate being here.
Welcome. I just have to stop the recording.